Hey babes, my name's Hannah.
And my name's Chastity.
Welcome back to Bookish Babes.
Today we will be doing our March reading wrap-up.
So the first book I read this month was The Ghostwriter by Alexandra Torre, which I ended up giving 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's marketed as a psychological thriller, I think. And it definitely does have aspects of a thriller, but I would say it's more of a thriller-based contemporary fiction. It's basically about this author who gets diagnosed with a terminal form of brain cancer and is given 3 months to live, I think is the time frame. But she really wants to finish the story on how her husband and her daughter died. She wants to write a book all about it. And she ends up hiring on somebody to ghostwrite the book, hence the name. And through the writing sessions and through everything from her point of view, you do learn the truth of how her husband and her daughter die. So it was really good. I would really recommend it. Like I said, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars.
I'm glad that I bought that one.
Yeah.
Now I want to read it.
You should really read it. It was good.
Okay, so the first one that I read this month, or I guess reread, is Fuck Love by Taryn Fisher. So every single time I read a Taryn Fisher book, I think that I've found my new favorite character. And that's really problematic for me because now I can't choose. I really can't. Fuck Love was about Helena, who has a dream in the beginning of the story, and it kind of just alters her entire reality. She starts to have feelings for her best friend's boyfriend.
Okay.
And it seems like that's pretty reciprocated. But there's a whole lot more to it. Like, that makes it sound really simple, and it's not a simple book at all. I related hardcore to Helena.
I feel like anytime I read a Taryn book, I relate to the female lead.
I super feel... This story really got me because I was certain how I wanted this book to end until, like, the last 4 chapters. And then I was like, well, maybe. And then, like, the ending was...
Were you pissed?
I was not pissed. There was a new character introduced at the very end, and I want more of that character. I need to know.
Is that character gonna be in the sequel though?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I've read the first chapter of the sequel because it's in the end of The Consequences of Falling by Claire Contreras, and I do not know. I have no idea. Muslim is the name of the character. I need to know his story, guys. I need to know.
I bet she's not just gonna leave it like that.
She can't. To do that?
Yeah.
Would be so awful. Like, I need to know. So the ending really got me. But I definitely give it a 5 out of 5.
Okay.
Highly recommend. One of the best ones that she's written.
So the next book I read this month, I have finally gotten to after months of saying that I'm going to start this series. And it was Fallen Too Far by Abby Glines, which is the first, of course, the first book in the Rosemary Beach series. I don't know why I think like I'm telling anybody something new. Like, this is such a well-loved series. I loved Rush and Blair.
I love Rush.
I have such a hard time with, like, there's certain romance authors that I can read and really enjoy, but for the most part, over the past, like, year or so, I've been having such a hard time with romance. Then this one really got me. This has everything that I look for. I did end up rating this 4 out of 5 stars, though, for it's wholly just Nan.
Just Nan.
So she's the worst. And it's not even like, usually I like when there's a little bit of a bad character to kind of balance everything out.
Yeah, we like villains.
For sure. She's awful. Anytime she came on the pages, I was like, no, absolutely not. This character did not. I mean, I'm not going to say she didn't need to exist.
No, she definitely adds to the story. She's an integral part.
Yeah.
But she's just awful.
She's the worst. She annoys me. She annoys everyone. She can't get over herself. Really, her life hasn't been that hard, yet she's acting like she was, like, locked in a room and beaten to death as a child. Like, she
kind of does.
But her life, like, she had a shitty mom. She had an absentee father. Like, welcome to the club. Like, lots of people have absentee fathers and they don't act like that.
But the good thing about her life is she had Rush.
Yeah, she had.
Rush took care of
her older
everything.
brother took care of her and it still takes care of her. She's never had to work a day in her life. Never. He financially supports her. He lets her throw parties in his nice ass house. Like, she has nothing to complain about, yet she chooses to complain about everything. So that's the only reason. If she,
it's the man show.
Yeah, if I had seen some sort of development with her by the end of the book, I may have been more likely to rate it 5 out of 5 stars. But I just couldn't. I hated her. She was the worst.
The next book I read was actually a poetry collection called Letters to the Moon by J.R. Rogue. I've mentioned J.R. Rogue before on our channel. I really, really enjoy her poetry. This one was the same thing. I loved the writing. Her writing just kind of spills off the page for me, and I am for sure a J.R. Rogue fan for life. This one I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, only because it is a shorter poetry collection. I didn't relate to as many of the poems in this story as I did in some of her other collections, but it's still a fantastic collection, and I would recommend it.
The next book I read, I obviously finished Fallen Too Far, and I needed more, so I read Never Too Far, which I'm pretty sure I rated that one 5 out of 5 stars. That one was my favorite out of the 3, not including Rush Too Far, which I'm actually reading right now, so that'll be in next month's wrap up. But Never Too Far was, like I said, my favorite. That was kind of where their relationship really blossoms into something. You know, I feel like Never Too Far, it's them like getting used to each other and it's them falling in love. And now, what can I say? I can't really spoil this, can I?
No, I wouldn't give too much away. It's definitely a needed sequel.
It is. Yeah, and I'll get more into that when I talk about my next book.
And literally, Blair and Rush, let's just say their chemistry is off the charts.
It's ridiculous how much I was rooting for them. But yet how much I kind of didn't know if everything was going to work itself out. You know, usually when I read a romance book, I'm like, oh, clearly they're going to end up together. But really, I didn't know if Blair was going to be able to get over what had happened. I think she had every right to not get over what had happened.
Honestly, because I'm a little bit further and I've read some of Abby's other books in other series, I think she has a real nice talent for kind of leaving you wondering whether or not it's actually going to work out.
Yeah. It was kind of, I was constantly wondering if everything was going to work itself out and if, you know, Rush and Blair were just going to continue to like be tortured because they couldn't get over what had happened in the past, or if, you know, everything was just going to be smooth sailing.
Copacetic.
Yeah. I won't say anything else about it because I don't want to ruin it.
So the next one that I read this month is Where I Belong by J. Daniels. This is a story of Mia, who has been taking care of her really, really sick mom. She's 18 or 19, she's pretty young, and she is going away for the summer to go back to where they used to live, which is Alabama. She's going back to stay with a friend for the summer while her aunt takes care of her mom, and to kind of just, I don't want to say let loose because that's not really the point, but to, I guess, take a break, kind of have a little bit of her own life. She is very insistent on losing her V card before she goes back to Alabama because her friend, and if you read this book, Tessa is her best friend, and Tessa is very much like, that's all she talks about is sex. So there was like one of the reasons why Mia wanted to lose her V card before she went and spent the summer with Tessa. So there were some very good parts to this book and some very cringeworthy parts to this book. I don't know if I said this before, but I rated it a 3-star out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed the plot. I liked the character growth. Ben has a son, Nolan, and I really love Mia, Ben, and Nolan's connection. However, there were a few parts that were just very cringeworthy for me. Tessa, who is her best friend, Mia's best friend, and Ben's sister, wants to know intimate details about Mia's sex life.
With her brother.
With her brother.
Yeah.
That's weird to me.
Nasty.
That's really, really weird.
Really gross.
Especially in the aspect of like, we're not just talking like, oh, you had sex kind of thing. This is
like, how was it? Thumbs up? Cool.
The moment that you question your brother's size is when you lose me.
Ew.
Like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Also, I am not a prude. I am not against sex scenes. I'll enjoy a sex scene as much as the next person. However, this one had some weird timing issues for me. Like some of them, spoiler alert.
Did you see like her mom died?
Her mom dies and Ben gets shot hours apart. The first time that they see each other, they have sex in the back of a car. Like, can we just be real for a minute? Like, her mom just died. He was shot. This is a very awkward time to be having sex. I really...
It would just never happen, no.
It would never happen. And I've been through what Mia went through. Like, I know that feeling.
You took care of your mom.
I took care of my mom, and she passed away. So I related wholeheartedly to those parts, and I definitely sobbed, and I know for sure that is the furthest thing from your mind when that happens.
Yeah.
So I would definitely... It's not going to be my last book from J. Daniels. I love some of the stuff that she writes, but this one I just had some issues with that I think could have been done a little differently.
Yeah. The next book I read this month was, of course, Forever Too Far by Abby Glines, which is the third one in the Rosemary Beach series, and the last Russian Blair book, if you don't count Rush Too Far, which is just the first one from his point of view instead of from Blair's point of view. This one I gave 3 out of 5 stars for a lot of reasons. One, once again, Nan. Yeah, Nan was much more involved in this book, which I hated. The one good thing, the best thing about Forever Too Far was that Dean Finlay was much more involved in this book, and I love Dean.
For the record, Dean is a rock star, so let's just put that into context.
She has a thing for rock stars from romance novels. It just is what it is.
I just have a thing for rock stars in general.
Yeah.
Sorry, not sorry.
Right?
I love me a good rock star.
But I found this book to, for the most part, just kind of be the most boring out of the 3. I kind of feel like, you know how earlier we said that Never Too Far was like the necessary sequel? I kind of feel like Forever Too Far was an unnecessary sequel. I think she could have stopped at 2.
I can understand that. I think it was kind of just like a nice little wrap up.
Yeah.
And it did, like you said, include Nan a whole lot more.
Yeah. And but for me, just kind of, it's not that I didn't enjoy it.
There was definitely some pressure put on their relationship, and I think...
but I feel like this all, like, I don't think that it was necessary for it to be 3 books long. I think that she could have included some of the dynamics from Forever Too Far in the second book and just ended it at the second book. There wasn't enough for the third book, I feel like. I think that there was parts where I was like, okay, like, I'm kind of ready for this to be over. I love them, but I'm kind of ready for this whole thing to be over.
I get that.
I do love, spoiler alert, I love that we get to see them as parents for the first time in this book. That was probably my favorite part.
Freaking cute.
I know. We say he's cute, and he's in a book. Like, we haven't seen him,
but he's cute.
But the way they describe him is cute. Yeah, and so that was nice, and it was kind of nice to see their marriage. In this book, I want to say they get married in this book, don't they? Or do they get married in the end of the second?
I believe it's the third.
Yeah, so they're newlyweds. She's pregnant, and they're dealing with this really, really hard time with Nan, and Nan just ruins everything. She just literally destroys everything, and that's why I just couldn't handle this book, because she was so involved in it, and I just hate her so much. Really, I just have a huge issue with her.
The next one that I read this month is Don't Tell Me to Be Quiet by Christina Hart. This was another poetry collection, one that I related to a lot. I just want to put out there that I love Christina Hart. I love that girl, and I would highly recommend anything by her. This was a poetry collection. She does have novels as well, and if you have not read her, I highly, highly recommend it. This one was a 5 out of 5 for me.
Okay.
5 out of 5. Like, I cried.
Yeah. The next book I read this month, like I said, I kind of said a few minutes ago, I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars, and it was All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover, which is like one of her all-time favorites. Didn't you say this was like your favorite by her?
Second favorite.
Yeah. I didn't think I was gonna enjoy this because it's about a couple who's like, I want to say they're like in their 30s at this point.
Yeah.
And they're married and they're dealing with issues in their marriage, which isn't something that I can relate to at 20 years old.
Trigger warning, spoiler alert, it's definitely about a lot of infertility issues.
And, you know, an affair and it's just, it was a lot, and it wasn't something that I thought that I was going to enjoy, but I ended up, like I said, reading it in less than 24 hours, and I ugly cried while reading this book.
I literally sobbed the entire novel.
Because you see Quinn just manifesting these feelings that she has and convincing herself that her husband resents her and that they should get a divorce because
I'm gonna cry just talking about this.
Because she can't give him a child because she has endometriosis and is unable to conceive, and that she thinks that they should get a divorce so that he has a chance to be a father, when in reality you very quickly realize it's not that he doesn't want to be a father. He cares more about his marriage than he does about having a child. And he's okay if it's just the two of them, but she's just like torn apart. And like I said, there's instances, or just really one instance of an affair, which that was the worst part for me, which I'm not trying to spoil anything, but there is like a part where she's like, what's her name? And I kind of figured she was being crazy, and I thought he was gonna turn around and be like, you're being crazy, I'm not having an affair. But then he said the other woman's name, and like I just like my heart like fell through my ass. Like I was heartbroken by it. So this is just one that I really, really recommend, and I've started telling everyone that I think everybody should read this book before they get married, because it shows, you know,
they had the perfect marriage.
They had the perfect,
so
they had like
together.
the perfect relationship before they got married too, and all of these things were stacked up against them. And I think it's just really important to read, because it kind of shows what a real marriage can end up being like if you let it get to that point.
Oh, the next one that I read this month is Reconstructing Amelia by Kimberly McCrae. I don't know if I said that right, but that's what I'm going with.
Okay.
So this novel is a psychological thriller. It's about Amelia, who is a teenager who kills herself, jumps off of a building, her school building actually, and her mother Kate gets a random text that says she didn't jump. There's a whole lot of, it's like a private school. Earlier that day, Kate was called and told that they were suspending Amelia because she was caught cheating, which again was not like her daughter. Like Amelia was a perfect student, and she was a writer, and she was going for this writing program, and she wanted to go to a really big college, and she was just an all-around good kid, and that Kate never really had to worry about. So all of these things just didn't add up. And she had a dead daughter, and it made no sense.
I want to read this one real bad.
So another interesting thing about this book is a lot of it is told in newsletter form, text message form, and like Facebook posts. So like they jump from Amelia's chapters from before she jumped, and then Kate after. And then in between it's kind of akin to Gossip Girl, where there's like a newsletter being posted by somebody in the school, and it's like all the hot gossip and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of text messages between Amelia and her friends, and then there's Amelia's Facebook posts. So I thought it was really interesting the way it was written. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars because it really kept me intrigued. However, the ending, the actual truth behind it, like 2 chapters back, there was such a bigger setup, I think, that could have been the ending. That would have been a little bit more like suspenseful. So I don't want to say that the ending was anticlimactic, but it kind of was.
So the next book that I read this month was Twisted Perfection, which is the 5th book in the Rosemary Beach series, but it's the first book with Della and Woods. Now, I asked Chasity before I started this book, I really just wanted to skip to Grant and Harlow's story, and I was like, can I just skip these ones? Like, I don't really like Woods that much. And she's like, no, you can't skip it, you're gonna miss so much, and also you don't have to like Woods because you're gonna love Della. And I totally ended up adoring Della. I still wasn't like, it's not that I didn't like Woods, like I liked Woods more, but like he still wasn't my favorite. But I loved Della.
Loved Della.
For me though, I rated these 3.5 out of 5 stars. only because it was really just, there wasn't the development in their relationship that there was with Rush and Blair's story. It was really all about sex from the beginning with them. They had so much sex, and that I was like, how can you say you love her? Like, you haven't even gotten to know her. You've just had sex with her 17 times. Like, I don't understand kind of how they got to that point. But Della was a badass.
That's why I was like, you have to read them, because Della's backstory,
yeah, was worth like the whole situation for me. So if that hadn't been the case, this probably would have been much lower rated for me. But I don't know if I should give it a 3.5 or a 4 out of 5 stars. I'm kind of on the fence, but I enjoyed them. I didn't enjoy their romance as much as Rush and Blair's, but I liked Della as a character, and I liked her backstory.
I also did like the aspect of Wood's family, like their involvement.
Yes.
I thought that was a really interesting dynamic to the story.
Because that's what kind of fascinated me about him from the beginning, like even when he was involved in Falling Too Far, was that he, you know, he grew up, he's from money, but he doesn't really always act like he's from money. And so that was really cool to see also. And of course, what's his name? The other guy? God, what's his name?
Trip.
I love Trip. And aren't there books about Trip also?
I haven't gotten there yet, but I love Trip.
I'm very, very excited to see more about him, because Trip also comes from money, but he like pieced out. He left Rosemary Beach. He was like, I don't want this life. So that's really interesting to me. I'm excited to read more about that. And
actually, him leaving is how Della became incorporated into the story.
Yes, because him and Della worked together at a bar at like, I can't remember what state they were in, but he bounces from state to state, and she was there working, trying to get back on her feet, and she ended up being mixed up with the boss, and he's like, here are my keys, here's my address, just go stay at my place in Rosemary Beach for a while until you can figure out what you want to do.
Like, okay, and cool, yeah, let me do that.
She met Woods.
Cool, let me do that.
Right?
Okay, so the next one I read, I'm actually not going to say a lot about. It was The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss.
Okay. I'm currently trying to get through that. It's very long-winded, and it's very high fantasy.
And we do plan on doing a video for it, reviewing it, so I'm really not going to say too much, but it is very, very high fantasy, and it's not my normal type of read, but I really, really did enjoy it. It took me a while to get into it, not gonna lie. It took me a while to get into it. It's not so much of a character-driven story, so it was a little bit harder for me to follow. I'm having a hard time
getting into it right now.
But I think it was worth it in the end. And I probably will read the second one.
What did you rate it?
I haven't yet.
Okay. So we're getting the first scoop. What do you think you're going to rate it?
I think I'm going to rate it a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
And there's reasons behind that.
It's such a well-loved book.
It is. It is. And like I said, I have trouble with it.
Yeah.
But there's some really interesting theories. There's some really interesting characters. And I think I will probably have a more accurate rating on the first one after I read the second one.
Okay.
I just feel like there's so many open...
So many open doors.
So many open doors.
Yeah.
I have no idea what's going to really happen. And I feel like I almost can't even base my opinion on the first one until I finish the second one.
Oh, the next book that I read this month, and I promise after this one I'm done talking about the Rosemary Beach series.
Till next month.
Right. I'm already reading another one. But it was Simple Perfection, which was, of course, the second Della and Woods book. This one I preferred much more to the first one. So I'm going to go ahead and say, like, I'm reading the first one 3.5. I'll rate this one 4 out of 5. I really, 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 this is where you get to hear a lot about her backstory. And this is kind of where Della, you start to see her as a character, and you start to see her pull away from Woods a little bit, because she's under the impression that Woods thinks a different way about her than he actually does. And once again, kind of all I'm going to say about it. Woods definitely, this is more, there still definitely is like way too much sex for my liking. Once again, I'm not a prude either, but like there's just like a certain line that I have to draw where I'm like, okay.
So I think the thing is we can enjoy a sex scene. I prefer mine to tie in a little bit more and have a little bit more meaning.
Be relevant to the story versus just like,
because that's how I felt with Where I Belong too. Is like, okay, well, why is this happening?
Yeah.
Why do I need to read it more than?
That's just it. Is it's like it wasn't necessary to write in the book, but they definitely get to know each other quite a bit more during this book, and it just makes sense that they end up together a little bit more than before when they were just doing nothing but having sex and not talking.
The last book that I read of this month was How Not To by Devon Sawyer. This was her debut, I believe. Yeah, this was her debut.
I'm also currently reading this one.
I loved this book.
I'm excited.
I loved this book. This was so good for a debut. First of all, that's just first and foremost. That was just such a good book for a debut. The storyline is about Ari, who comes a little bit more from money. Her father is an accountant, and that's what she's learning. She's in high school, by the way. And then there's Torin, who is from the wrong side of the tracks, bad boy.
You know what reminds me of Atlas?
Oh, he does. So the whole thing is he works at his brother's shop, and his brother's having some issues with his books. So Torin goes to Ari and is like, hey, will you help my brother find out what is going on with his books, and I will give you this car that I'm fixing up. So they make an agreement. And of course, once they start working together, some chemistry happens. One thing leads to another, and Torin ends up getting arrested. Going away for a while.
You're not going to talk anymore about the arrest?
No.
Will it ruin some stuff?
Yeah, I'm not going to ruin any of this because this book is so good. I really, really enjoyed it. We flash forward like 8 years, I think it is. And Torin has his own security company. And he gets hired by this company, Eventor.
How long was he in jail for?
I can't remember.
Like a while?
It was a while. A while.
Like years?
I want to say it was years, but it wasn't the entire 8 years.
Okay.
Like that they skip. But he was in for a while. And I'm also I don't want to talk about his arrest because it's going to spoil some things that you find out. Some characters for you that I don't want to ruin. So anyways, he gets hired by Eventor to be the security at all these big parties. And it turns out that John, who runs Eventor, his like right-hand person, turns out to be Ari.
Oh my god, cute.
I really, really liked the like character growth in this one. I liked the chemistry. They were very, very like...
I love that he comes and I like that he comes from the wrong side of the tracks, but he ends up like owning his own company. I love stories like that.
I loved this story. I think it was written beautifully. I think they were very... the word that I want to use to describe them is spicy. Like that was their relationship, was spicy. That's how I feel about this. And I would highly, highly recommend this one. And I'm definitely going to be reading more from her, for sure. 5 out of 5.
Love that. So, the very last book that I read this month is Karamo by Karamo Brown. This is the first book that he's ever written, I believe. If you guys don't know, Karamo Brown is from Queer Eye. He is one of the Fab Five. He does like, he handles all like the culture, I think is technically what his title is. He's like the culture person. But this was basically his story, which I found really interesting because I've always found him the most interesting. He is Black and he grew up in the South, and his name, I think it's Jamaican, and he wasn't very proud of his name for a long time, and he talks about that a lot in this book and how it was embarrassing. It was something that nobody else around him had a name like that because he did grow up in such a small town and it was predominantly white. And he talks a lot about the fact that even though he's gay and he's known he was gay from a young age, he does have a biological son, and he's witnessed some domestic abuse, and he talks about meeting his partner and reconnecting with his son and adopting his second son. I just think it's really incredible that he ended up not only taking custody of his biological son, but also adopting his biological son's brother, who he was not related to in any way, shape, or form, but now he's his father. And he talks about auditioning for Queer Eye, and what I thought was the most interesting is because I'm such a huge fan of the show, is that they were in this group chat. The current Fab Five were in a group chat, and they all texted and said, oh my god, we got it, we're in. Everybody except Anthony. Anthony was the only one who like didn't get a call, and they were all like horrified and they thought Anthony didn't make it. But of course he did. So I liked kind of hearing the behind the scenes to that also. It was really interesting. I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed reading it, and it was a quick read. The way he told his story, it was very easy to just sit down and knock out, and it all made sense. It all tied together. I really, really enjoyed it. I'd really recommend it if you're a fan of his or if you just want to know more about him.
So that's it for us, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe.
All of our social media and also our Goodreads will be linked down below, and we will see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.